What I would like to do now is I would just like to give a brief overview of each of the markets individually. Natalie sort of presented an overall picture of the entire French Caribbean, but I want to get into each individual market so we can get a better understanding of what each market has to offer. So this is an overview essentially of each market. We have Guadeloupe, French Guiana, and Martinique. We can see in terms of landmass, both of Guadeloupe and Martinique are very small, much smaller than Trinidad and Tobago. And in terms of population, about half, less than half the size of Trinidad and Tobago. French Guiana, you can see, is much larger in terms of land space, but of course the population is half that of both Guadeloupe and Martinique. The reason is most of the island is covered by forests, and the population tends to stay to the coastline. So when we visited, it was quite interesting, the amount of jungles and everything. I mean, we think we have jungles in Trinidad and Tobago. That is real jungles. It was quite interesting. Combined, both of them have a population of 1.1 million, which is less than Trinidad and Tobago. Even though the market size is small, we thought it is a very nice, very readily available proving ground for Trinidad and Tobago products as a gateway into Europe. Because essentially this is Europe, and it's Europe in the Caribbean. So if you can make it in these markets, if you can achieve the standards in those markets, if you can sell to the consumers in the market, it is a very, it goes a long way to getting you into the French markets and then further on into the European markets as a whole. Just looking at some of the demographic and the projections for the demographic profile of the islands, what we can see is that the population is an aging population. If you look at some of these statistics, you can see that by 2030, the population of 60 years and older will almost double compared to what it is right now. The reason that is that many young persons are in the French islands are going towards France to get their education. And what you find is that when people retire in France, they tend to come to live their life in the warm Caribbean sun. So the population is an aging population, and that would, of course, affect the profile and the taste profile in the upcoming years. So it's something that we should take into account to really understand the long-term sustainability of these markets in terms of our products and services. In terms of GDP, now, some of these statistics you always see will be 2009, 2005. The reason is these markets don't report their statistics individually. They report it as part of France. So when you look at France GDP includes mainland France, but includes all the outlying regions as well. So data tends to be a little more difficult to come by. You have to disaggregate the data, and sometimes it can take a little while. And as a result, the reporting tends to be a little lagged. So while ideally we would like to have 2011 data, we do have to disaggregate. And this is the same in terms of exports, in terms of unemployment, in terms of inflation, etc. So even though the data might look a little outdated, these are the latest statistics that are available for the French Caribbean. So GDP in 2009, we see Guadeloupe 8.2 billion, French Guiana 3.2, and Martinique 7.7. And of course, this takes into account population figures. If you look at GDP per capita, you can see that GDP per capita in each market is very high, with Martinique being the highest, just above Guadeloupe, and French Guiana a little way behind, but not too far. And if you look at it compared to Trinidad and Tobago, you can see that the per capita GDP is higher than that of Trinidad and Tobago, which means that the consumers in each market have a lot of purchasing power. Good reason, as Natalie pointed out earlier, the minimum wage is actually, actually it's 8.86, close to 10 euros per hour. That's per hour, not per day, because when you think about 8.86, that's about 50 TT, which could be a minimum wage per day in Trinidad, but it's per hour in the French Caribbean, which has a lot of ramifications for production costs and overall competitiveness. So looking at the data, we can see that there's a lot of purchasing power in these markets. So they have the funds and they're looking to purchase the goods. We just have to get them to buy Trinidad and Tobago products. Just to give an idea, some of the shipping as well as the airline options for these markets. We found in the market, we met with shipping agencies and and we got information about the shipping lines. There is a regular shipping line to the French Caribbean from Trinidad and Tobago. They run, and I will go into greater detail later on in the presentation, but we found that they run on a regular basis and they run sometimes directly with maybe just one stop. French Guiana is a bit more complicated in that you have to go to Suriname first, but I mean, compared to shipping to Latin America, which tends to be more complicated, the French Caribbean tends to present a much simpler picture in terms of shipping. In terms of visiting, in terms of the airline options, LIAT flies. However, from Trinidad and Tobago, you have to connect through to St. Lucia, or you have to connect through Antigua. Again, French Guiana is a bit more complicated. There are no direct flights from Trinidad and Tobago to French Guiana, so you essentially have to go through Martinique or through Guadeloupe, which involves you taking about 2 to 3 planes, which can be a bit complicated. We found that out the hard way, by the way. In terms of the main exports, into all 3 islands, they have their main exports have been traditional agricultural exports. In the case, you have a refined oil for Martinique and agro-processing, bananas, sugarcane and bananas for Guadeloupe, and gold fishing, rice and shrimp from French Guiana. Interestingly, we found that Martinique has a very large rum industry, and they take very much pride in it, so they protect it as much as they could. For a small island, 500,000 people, there are 11 rum manufacturers. Yeah, Kristen? 11? Yes. There are 11 rum manufacturers in Martinique, and they export all of their product to mainland France. So Martinique rum is very much their pride and joy. Their main industries, and I'm using main very loosely, is agro-processing, construction, oil refinery, services in terms of tourism, trade, and so on. The reason why I'm using main very loosely is that there is not much industry in the French Caribbean. Most of their products are imported. There are a few industries, but it's very on a smaller scale, so you wouldn't find much main industries. So in terms of what that means for Trinidad and Tobago is that if we have to compete in those markets, we are not competing against locally produced products. We are competing against imports. And when we speak about trade, we will go into greater detail about it. And again, the minimum wage, 8.86 euro per hour. As I was saying earlier, the shipping lines, this really represents a shipping route from CMA CGM between the Guianas, Trinidad and Tobago, and France. And you can see the transit time from Trinidad and Tobago to Guadeloupe is 1 day, to Martinique is 1 day, to French Guiana it is 4 days to Suriname and 6 days to the port in French Guiana. So shipping is not, and they run once a week. So shipping is not that complicated. So it can be advantageous to Trinidad and Tobago. In terms of current trade with Trinidad and Tobago and the French Caribbean, we do have a history of trade with the French Caribbean, but again, it is dominated by energy. Non-energy trade to the French Caribbean has not been as boisterous as we would like it to be, which we hope to change with this project. In addition to the mineral products, we do foodstuff, we do chemicals, we do plastics, wood, textiles, and also metal exports. When we did our supermarket visits, we found surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, when we were in French Guiana, we actually went through the supermarket shelves and we found Buster ready to be sold in French Guiana on the shelves. And in Martinique, we visited a brick factory / theme park. I know, interesting. And we found that one of our companies, Trinidad Aggregate Products, sells tiles on a regular basis too. So there is existing trade between Trinidad and Tobago and the French Caribbean. However, we import very little from the French Caribbean. In looking at the statistics, you can see Trinidad and Tobago share in CARIFORUM. CARIFORUM is all CARICOM countries plus the Dominican Republic. We dominate trade to the French Caribbean. If you look at the statistics, out of the 340 million, we did 321. And again, most of that is energy exports. And there's very little trade from the other from the other CARIFORUM nations. This is demonstrated in this slide. You can see the mineral trade is very much dominating total exports to the French Caribbean currently. In terms of imports from the French Caribbean, if you look at Trinidad and Tobago figures at the bottom, we import very little. And again, if you look at the figures overall, the Caribbean imports very little from the French Caribbean. With the exception of, if you look, you'll see Antigua and Barbuda. Again, that has a proximity factor. Antigua is very close to the French Caribbean. And if you look at Haiti, they share language and they share some history. And also St. Lucia, again, proximity goes into that. So the islands that imports from the French Caribbean tends to be islands that are very close or share some cultural ties with the French Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago, very, very little. Just some statistics on each of the islands. If we look at Martinique, we can see the balance of payment in 2006, and again, this is the availability of data. We can see they exported US 818 million and imported US 3.5 billion. And of that 3.5 billion, I would say 95% is from France. They import very, very little from other France and other European countries. They import very little from other destinations. One of the distributors we spoke to, he said that France is second to mind for many people in the French Caribbean. If you need something, it's almost second nature that you pick up the phone and you dial France. You don't even consider dialing Trinidad and Tobago or dialing Jamaica or dialing another island. You go automatically to the metropole. Composition of GDP, agriculture 6%, industry again very small, 15%, services, tourism, financial services, etc., 72% of GDP. The inflation rate 2.4%, which is very small, and again that really is inherited from France. And the unemployment rate 25.2%, which I thought was very high, considering when you have 8.86 minimum wage. That would encourage me to go out and work. Right. As I mentioned, heavy dependency on metropolitan France and the European Union. Per capita income is among the highest in the French Overseas Department. The countries that demand economy. So they demand a lot of consumer products because they are propelled by household consumption. And the economy is fast becoming service-based. And this is something we can see on the ground. When you go and you speak to the Chamber of Commerce, they are effectively looking to really look at services as their own, what they can offer. They're not really looking into manufacturing, they're more looking into services. So it's something that you can actually notice on the ground when you get there. For example, tourism and, agriculture has always been their traditional exports, bananas, sugarcane, etc. Economic diversification started in 1970, food production, beverage, and again rum, household cleaning, and a small cosmetics industry. Here and here, body products, including lotions. So they are actively looking at these products to really diversify their exports and their manufacturing in Martinique. Outbound freight is dominated by the exports of banana to France, and this is subsidized, both coming in and both going out. The economy is also made up of many small companies. So if you look, you can see over 17,000 small and medium-sized enterprises were registered in Martinique, and over 1,500 businesses are created annually. That is a very large number for such a small population. And most of these businesses are in the services sector. So really the island is looking at services as a way to really earn revenue. Light industry employed about 13.9% of the population, and the agro-food sector, sugar and rum, as well as fruit and vegetable processing are the highest. Other key local industries, renewable energy, solar, construction. They offer waste management and environmental management. And again, their imports are comprised of 60% manufactured goods, which really is for consumption within the island. 21% of energy generating products, 15% of agro-processing, and 1.7% of agricultural produce. And they exports refined oil, there's a large refinery, banana, and rum. Now, just a special note given, we met with the Chamber of Commerce in Guadeloupe, and the Chamber of Commerce is a very large and powerful institution in Martinique. They essentially govern the trade that's done with Martinique, and all businesses are required to be a member of Chamber of Commerce. That's correct, right, Eugene? Yes. All businesses in Martinique are required to be members of the Chamber of Commerce, and I believe they control the ports and the airport for now. We got it from the horse's mouth that they are looking they are looking towards the Caribbean for alternative sources of supply. They want to sort of open their market to products from the Caribbean. So that creates a unique opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago products and also other products in the Caribbean. They want to do, but they insist that the trade be reciprocal as well. So if we're trading with them, they want to trade with us. And I think they had a trade mission that came here previously, but unfortunately they were not able to secure any business. So we might have to take that into account if we are looking to promote trade with Martinique. They have some skepticism about the EPA because what they indicated is that even though they are developed country, they are a small island, they are part of the Caribbean. So while France might not have a problem with reciprocal trade, they see it as a disadvantage to them, even though they are part of France. So we have to look, it's a unique dynamic that we need to look at. Okay, let's look at Guadeloupe for a few minutes. Guadeloupe, again, major trade imbalance towards imports. And again, everything is imported from the metropole. The inflation rate, 3.2%, which is about on par with what Martinique has. And employment rate, again, very high, 27.3%. So it might be interesting to look at what's the reason for the higher unemployment figure. The economy can be described as a service economy, with tourism being the mainstay of economy. They take their tourism very, very seriously in Guadeloupe. Agriculture is another important industry, and again, the exports of bananas. If you drive through the Guadeloupe countryside, you see acres and acres of banana fields. About 42,000 small and medium-sized companies operate in Guadeloupe, and most of them have less than 10 employees. So again, it's a very small business-driven market. And the companies are mainly, again, in the services sector. There's diversification of industries from rum and sugar to cement, building materials, boxes, plastics, as well as ship repair, spring water, renewable energies, and new technologies being developed. So what this tells me is that the economy of Guadeloupe, and you can make an argument for Martinique as well, they are basically diversifying away from primary products. They're looking at products higher up the value chain, and you can see with renewable energies and technologies. So they're very much looking at improving, moving away from primary and diversifying their exports. So I thought that was very interesting to observe. Spring water is currently sold to markets such as Martinique, St. Vincent and Antigua. Key services sector include renewable energy, clean technology, marketing, and advertising. And of course, the European markets, the export markets are mainly Europe, but they also export to Japan, Guyana, St. Vincent, and Antigua. The country also does luxury products such as liquor, spices, fine confectionery, and fashion. So again, we see the value-added products that they are looking to develop. And the services sector, energy, IT, training and education, and architecture. One interesting fact that we found is that we visited the customs, was it? I'm trying to remember. It was customs in Guadeloupe, and they have the Port and Maritime Association, and they're developing a new technology called BECA. This is essentially a technology that would allow for better management of shipping lines. So you can get all the shipping information that you need based on this online platform. It functions similar to a search engine, and it gives information on maritime services for break bulk cargo or containers. It classifies the lines by country, directory of ports, operators, and it's a multi-language platform. So it's a very unique, innovative platform that they are looking to roll out throughout the Caribbean, and they are looking for partners in They're looking for partners in Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago to assist them in rolling it out. The service is free for the first year, and then it's a subscription for US $59 per year. So we thought it was something worth mentioning that this is the direction that Guadeloupe and the French Caribbean is moving into in terms of managing their imports and their exports. They're essentially making it easier for them to import and export, which says a lot about where their mind is going in terms of trading. French Guyana. The economy is tied closely to the larger French economy through subsidies and imports. The major economic activity, well, many of us would know, is the space program. France's space program is located in French Guyana, and they make no bones about it. When you pass through the airport, the first thing you see is a very large display with rockets, and very, very, very nice and very fancy. Fishing and forestry, as you would imagine, is the most important economic activities, given that the forest covers over 90% of the country. The large reserves of tropical hardwoods support an expanding sawmill industry. Cultivation of crops, however, is limited because of access mainland. So you find that agricultural products are usually planted and reaped on the coastline where everyone lives. And French Guyana is heavily dependent upon the imports of food and energy, and the energy comes from Trinidad and Tobago as well. Local industries, seafood, they produce shrimp, the very, very large shrimp that you would find, the prawns. Food processing includes juice and jams and construction. They have a very large PVC industry. They produce PVC products. And of course, wood, mining and energy, including solar energy. And services include telecommunication technologies, and they want to telemedicine. They want to render the services of their telemedicine services to Brazil. So they're looking to really expand into other markets in South America. Sectors identified for export promotions, and again, this came from the regional council: oil, rice, wood products, fish products, yogurt, and construction materials. This is what they're looking to develop. Target countries for export promotion: Southern European Union and the French territories. And they're also looking at Brazil and Suriname, given the proximity. Imports: food is imported from France, tropical juices from the Netherlands, and their major source of imports, again, France, followed by the other French Caribbean, Martinique and Guadeloupe. They also have close ties to Miami, Panama, China, and Trinidad and Tobago for petroleum. So what are the trade prospects with French Guyana? Developing trade with Miami and the US. Again, this is information we got on the ground. Martinique and Guadeloupe has established linkages with Miami, and French Guyana wants to follow suit. So they are actively exploring developing linkages with Miami. There's growing optimism that the ongoing oil and gas exploration could materialize into a major platform. And recently, the Trinidad and Tobago Energy Chamber conducted a mission to French Guyana with our energy and energy service providers to really see if there's opportunity, given that they are exploring for oil and gas in French Guyana. Another opportunity for trade is that they're trying to develop trade with Suriname and Brazil, because there's a highway that is commissioned connecting French Guyana to northern Brazil. The highway is not yet fully operational, but I imagine once it's open, it would really open the door for trade between the two nations. Trade will increase once this link is established. However, it may take some time as areas near the border in Brazil are underdeveloped. You have to go all the way down into the major city at northern Brazil. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. All right, trade prospects with Trinidad and Tobago. The current relation between French Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago is focused on energy, but I mean, it's a good link. It's a start. We can probably leverage off that link. I mean, if they know Trinidad and Tobago, we can go in with our products. Except for petroleum, there has not been any special focus on trade with TNT and the rest of the Caribbean. There are plans to establish a direct flight between Cayenne, which is the capital, and Port of Spain, if the relationship with the energy sector progresses enough. Hopefully there will be a direct flight, and you would not have to go to St. Lucia, then go to Martinique, and then go to French Guyana. Again, the shipping, there's a weekly CMA-CGM shipping service from Trinidad and Tobago to French Guiana, which goes every 6 days. And there's another line that works closely with CMA-CGM. They want to, and again, they are looking at the Caribbean as a source of supply because they import everything from France. And when you import everything from France, you are basically importing the costs that are associated with France. High wages, long shipping, etc. So more than one supplier has told us that they are looking towards the Caribbean for new sources of supply. If we can meet these standards, because of course they are Europe, so they have the European standards that you need to obey. If we can meet the standards, they have no problem buying from Trinidad and Tobago, particularly raw materials as well. Production and cost constraints. Production capacity of the local companies are small and they are sometimes unable to meet local demand, far less exports. And we saw this when we went to the supermarkets. You would find that you find a lot of open and free shelf space in the supermarkets, meaning that the local production cannot, and the shipments from France are not coming in regularly to restock the shelves. Brazil and Suriname have not been exported to French Guiana in any significant way because, again, they do not meet the EU standards. So that is a major challenge that we would need to face as well. Can we meet the EU standards? When they import goods from France, the containers are returned to France and they are returned empty because they have nothing to export back to France. French Guiana is not advanced in trade as the other FCORs, and there's minimal export activities at the port. When we met with the officials at the port, they said that the port is, while it's a very neat port, it is not as busy as some of the other ports. Scrap metal, wood products, and shrimp. And 98% of the activity on the port are imports rather than exports. Just to speak a little more about the port, major challenge, the depth. The port cannot accommodate very large ships. They normally have to dock out of a bay and they have to transfer the containers into the port. The plan is to expand to accommodate large ships, but this is a long-term project in French Guiana. And it is not cost-effective to install mobile cranes to discharge the cargo. The traffic on the port is quarter of that experienced in Martinique. And 90% of the cargo is handled by CMA-CGM, which facilitates the direct link between TNT and French Guiana, as we mentioned. And the shipping line is, if you look at Trinidad and Tobago in there, to Trinidad and Tobago to Suriname, and then to De Grade-des-Cans, which is the port in French Guiana. Special note, French Guiana evaluates a new foreign supplier's export capacity to determine if they can supply consistently before switching. So you have to demonstrate that you can provide a constant supply of goods before they will switch to you as a potential supplier. So that might entail long-term contracts. And Trinidad and Tobago needs to be more responsive to trade inquiries. We met with some suppliers and some distributors who indicated that they did approach Trinidad and Tobago companies, but they receive no response. So perhaps it's something that we can look at if we are doing business, that response time is very key. And lack of response tends to cut off the market. Potential investments in French Guiana. It is easy to establish a business in the market. There's no minimum amount of investment required. And companies need only to comply with the taxation system, which Regine will give more details when she delivers her presentation. There's no restriction on the type of business which may be opened. However, the standards include that the workers will need safety gear and the organization must meet rigid safety standards. That is across European safety standards. And food processing and wood products are prime areas for investment because they have the raw materials. What they don't have is the structure and the machinery and the factory space, etc. So it's something to take into consideration. So potential areas for collaboration: lumber and fish supplies to CARICOM, technical assistance in the area of renewable energies, and meeting EU standards. Okay, so that essentially ends my overview.